Tonight on EWTN Live, we'll talk about the importance of beautiful music and its ability to touch the spirit and move the soul. So please stay with us. Thank you very much and welcome. I'm Father Mitch and welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. Before we get to our guest, I want to mention that today is the feast of Saint Stanisław Kostka, a young Jesuit novice who was born in 1550 when St. Ignatius was still alive. He went to the Jesuit school in Prague and felt strongly attracted to the society. His father objected absolutely. And so he went on the road by himself, took the byways and sideways to get over to first to Vienna, and then from there to Germany, and where he met St. Peter Canisius, and then went down to Rome, where he ended the Jesuits. But as a novice, he died from fever and had lived a very, very exemplary life. And he's the patron saint of novices and was canonized in 1726. Also just want to mention briefly, it's the feast of Saint Mother Cabrini. She actually died in Chicago, part of the Jesuit parish there. So I want to remember her and all her sisters and all the great work they have done here in the Americas as missionaries to the Italian immigrants who came here. Now, over the last 20 years, our guest for tonight's show has been bringing you special musical performances from around the world through EWTN's In Concert music series, with everything from a cappella styles to grand orchestral works with mass choirs. In Concert has something for everyone. Check it out.
Welcome to this presentation of In Concert.
I'm Jacqueline Leary-Warsaw.
Thank you for being with us.
We hope you enjoyed this concert. So many of you have shared your stories with me about how In Concert has in some way touched you personally. Maybe it's that you learned something new, or that it brought your family together for an hour or so, conjured a special memory, filled a lonely day, helped you grow closer to the Lord, or to come back to the church that loves you, and so many more personal stories that I have had the privilege of knowing. Thank you to you faithful viewers. Welcome to you new viewers. For over 2 decades, In Concert has been here bringing you performances by the world's best musicians. We invite you to join us for In Concert.
Well, that's a little introduction, and here now to share with us how the In Concert series got its start here at EWTN and where it might be heading in the future. Please welcome Associate Professor of Music at Birmingham Southern College and the host of In Concert, Mrs. Jacqueline Leary-Warsaw. Welcome.
Thank you, Father.
Good to have you here. So you've been doing this show for 20 years now.
I have, and watching that montage just brought back so many wonderful memories, lots of good memories, happy memories, fun memories, and a lot of years. And it was, I just am so impressed with the beautiful montage that they put together.
Yeah, they do a good job here. Now, one of the things that it would be good for us to get some background on. I had spoken to Mother way back in the early 80s when I started here about the need to do this kind of program, but we were very early in the network and just getting started, and we only were on 4 hours a day. What do you recall brought about this series of In Concert and bringing all this music?
I recall a phone call that I received from the then Vice President of Production, Marshall Levioki.
Yes.
And he contacted me with the idea that he felt that there was a need for presenting a weekly concert series, something that we could bring to the audiences and something that would be based in the history of music, as well as, more importantly, in the history of the church. And so he contacted me, and he knew that I had had some experience in theater, in opera and musical theater. I was working at the time on my doctoral degree at Johns Hopkins, and so he knew that I would perhaps be somebody that could give a little bit of 2 cents about that. Sure. And we met. He came up with the idea that we perhaps could use the old Masterpiece Theater series. Do you remember that?
Sure.
That could perhaps be a nice model for us, meaning, more specifically, that in order to present these concerts, wouldn't it be very productive and more educational to have someone there to present the so-called program notes and what we call the wraps, the introductions, the intermission notes. And so in conversing about that, he said to me, so what do you think about if you took on that role? Well, I had never done television. Sure, I had done theater, I had done music since I was a child. I had never done television. And so the thought was quite stunning and intimidating for me. And so my first thought, although I didn't verbalize it, my first thought was, never in a million years could I do this. And but I agreed. I thought, if I am being called to do this, then absolutely I'll step up and see how it goes. Sure. I went through an audition process. I call it an audition process, but I did, they asked me to write a script. They gave me a concert to look at, write a script on it. That was not a difficult part of it for me, because again, with my background in academia, I was used to the research, I was used to writing about music. But then came the part where I had to do the screen test, and I walked into this studio, and they had a chair sitting there for me with a teleprompter in front. The teleprompter had the script out, and I just remember feeling so relieved that there was a chair for me to sit on, because my knees were just shaking like crazy. And I knew, had I had to stand in front of that camera for the first time, I would have probably fallen on my face. So I sat in the chair, I did my screen test. There were others that I went up against, and I got the job.
Now, there's something about this, like you mentioned, using Masterpiece Theater and doing these introductions. Why would an audience need to have an introduction to music? What do they get from having such an introduction?
Mm-hmm. The general population is used to hearing music, sure, and considering it on an aesthetic level. Obviously, we are surrounded by music, whether we are aware of it or not, throughout every moment of every day. However, while we are taking it in from an aesthetic level, we are in many, many cases not understanding where this music is originating from. We're not understanding where it lies within musical history. And therefore, we are really not appreciating it and understanding it to its fullest depths. And so it's very important that we do be educated about the background of these compositions.
And, you know, a lot of times the modern tendency is to think, well, you know, these guys just had these feelings and they just put it into music. But, you know, the nature of music, which was always studied in classical education programs. I mean, in Roman programs, medieval programs of the trivium and quadrivium, all the way through, music was studied because it has a mathematical and intellectual quality that is not just feeling, it's about the timing and pace and so many, the coordination things. Tell us about that.
Music has existed for as long as mankind has been on Earth. We know that because we know that from the very beginning. We understand that there are makeshift instruments that the earliest musicians made.
Yeah, well, the Neanderthals had flutes. So we know that.
Made out of bone, animal bones. So we understand that. However, as music went on, developed, and exactly, precisely, it was considered not only an art, but an aspect of mathematics. And to this day, it encompasses both. So there is the science and there is the art of music. Our great theorists study and compose music, and the theory of music is all mathematically based. Education of music is something right now in the United States that is it is up against some tough times.
Yes.
With the pulling of government funding within the schools, it's really caused a void in the education of music.
Yes.
We know that there have been many studies done that show us that a child between the ages of 6 to 8 are already set in their musical taste. Now that's a scary thought if you think about it, because what that means is that anything that we have heard up to that point in our life has already impacted us in some way.
So Barney is winning?
Barney may be winning. I hope Barney is not winning, but he may be winning. It really hit home when a few years ago at that time I was on the board of a children's opera organization. And I was at the auditions with the children. Now these are operas that were written for children. We're not talking about Puccini here.
Right.
That were written for children to perform and or adults to perform for audiences. So I was there at the auditions and saw this lovely, charming child who just happened to be there. She wasn't there to audition, but she just happened to be there. So I went up to her, I said, join us. Why don't you audition for this? Her mother was with her, a delightful woman who said to me, well, no, she does not like opera. And I was, of course, taken aback. And the thought, I did not say it, but the thought that I had is it she, the child, who does not like opera, or is it really the mother? Is it the mother? So that's what we find, is that the level of influence that musicians have on children, the level of influence that parents have on children, is crucial that we introduce it from as early an age as possible.
You know, I really wonder, as you speak about that, whether the absence of musical education in schools, because certainly I went to public schools and then Catholic schools, and there was always music. You know, that was part of it in both. Back then, we sang spirituals in public schools, probably forbidden now, but we could do it back then. But with the absence of music in schools today, that could even be a partial explanation for rap music being such a common type of vehicle with a minimum amount of music involved, but more of a verbal expression. And that they just don't know enough music to be able to make their poetry truly musical.
Absolutely. I think that's a very interesting point. I recently asked my daughter, who is in the 7th grade, how many of the students in your class study piano? Just take piano lessons. She said, well, 1 or 2. And I was shocked, because when I was in elementary school, the majority of the class took piano lessons, and maybe 1 or 2 students did not. So the music that our young people are hearing, sure, it is the rap, it is the commercial music. There's nothing wrong with that, but we have to make a conscious decision to introduce our children to music at as young an age as possible. How do we bring? How do we say music
that they can resonate with at that early stage? That you don't give them a Beethoven, quartet to start off with, but you work your way up.
Exactly. Music lessons are very expensive. Music in many cases throughout the country has been taken out of the schools. So what is left? Well, what is left is the initiative that we have to take in order to get students into the concert hall, into the church, into whatever venue we have where we can make that introduction. And so to bring it back to the church, this is where EWTN can come in with our young people. Not all of our viewers have access to a mass where the great classical music is heard, right?
Yeah, I'll never forget when I was living in Germany for a Pentecost weekend. I went over to Liechtenstein. I'll never be here again. So I went there, and I told the house mother at the youth hostel that, where's Mass? She said, well, we're doing a Bach Mass to celebrate Pentecost. This was a little parish church. It wasn't the cathedral. It was a country parish church where they sang Bach. To celebrate Pentecost.
Exactly.
And it belonged in the church.
That's right. Culturally, we are, my personal opinion is, we are behind in that. When we look at our European neighbors, I had a similar experience recently when I was singing in Europe, and I was rehearsing with the musicians that I was performing with. We were in a cathedral, a beautiful church, acoustically beautiful, architecturally beautiful, so it was a very inspiring environment. So we're rehearsing for this concert, and I look out, and there are about 100 to 150 families, parents with children, teenagers, just who had come in off the street because the acoustics were such that they could hear
Sure.
the music out on the street. So they'd come in to just simply sit down and listen in the middle of an afternoon. They didn't know the specifics of this, but they heard the music that we were performing, and they came in, they brought the children, entire families.
I'd like to give a little bit of a piece that you've done in the past. It's an a cappella piece. That means there's no instruments.
No instruments.
And so this is by a group called the King's Singers, and the piece is called Born on a New Day. Now, before we watch it, tell us a little bit about it.
Okay. This piece is actually taken from a concert that we're going to premiere on In Concert this coming December. The King's Singers, one may know, they are internationally renowned artists, English gentlemen, a cappella singing. And we are so very, very fortunate to have them on one of our concerts. And so this piece is a Christmas piece, and it is joyful, it's celebratory, and I hope our audience enjoys it.
Let's take a look at it.
You are the new day. You are the new day. Meekness, love, humility come down to us this day. Christ, your birth has proved to me you are the new day. Quiet in a storm you lie, angels watching in the sky, whisper to you from on high, you are the new day. When our life is dark as night, hope has burned away. Love, your ray of guiding light, show us the new day. Love of all things great and small, leaving none, embracing all. Fold around me where I fall, bring in the new day. This new day will be a turning point for everyone, if we let a Christ child in and reach for the new day. Christ, the way, the truth, the life, healing sadness, ending strife. You we welcome, Lord of life, born on a new day. You are the new day.
Splendid, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Wonderful.
And it's a fairly modern piece?
Yeah, it was composed in 1978 by the composer John David.
Okay.
And it is done commonly by larger vocal ensembles, actually. But it is beautiful. I think it's very inspirational. And I think that it's very accessible to the ear.
Yes.
I think that that's something that is a good example of music that through EWTN, through the church, that we can bring people in to understanding this sacred music and where it comes from. But that is a contemporary piece.
Yeah. Well, see, this is something that we certainly want people to experience in order to be better educated about music, but also to let the music raise us up, you know, and not just, too often I'm concerned that people are trying to focus on self-expression in the arts. Mm-hmm. That's a tendency among moderns, whereas the kind of music you're presenting is not about self-expression, but about expressing beauty and truth. And that's what a lot of folks still need to, you know, work back towards as an artistic ideal.
Yes. Music, as we have always say, is the universal language. So music is absolutely a form of expression. It is that one thing that everybody can communicate to each other with. But you're right, there is the aspect of the feel-good aspect. So it makes me feel good, or maybe not good, but it makes me feel something, right? But then there is that other level on which we must understand the music historically, and specifically to the church. It's really imperative that we understand the history of this music in order for us to enjoy the music better. If we understand it, then we can enjoy it all the better.
Exactly. And there's a quality, you know, even when you watch documentaries, mm-hmm. there's almost always musical background that affects the way it makes an impact. Mm-hmm. Shakespeare is fantastic, mm-hmm. but when someone like Verdi puts Macbeth or Othello into an opera so that there's a musical background as well as the story and the words, the drama takes on another quality because of the music.
Exactly.
That's what we need to grow and understand.
Exactly. So it's not only secular music that does that.
Yes.
To the contrary, it is liturgical music, it is sacred music, and this is where the church comes in. This is where In Concert comes in. When one is sitting in a church or in a concert hall and they're hearing these liturgical works or these sacred works, are they connecting? So we have to step back and we have to say, this music exists not in spite of the Catholic Church, but because of the church. That's where the disconnect is.
Yes.
So this music, which is so fully rich in tradition, it is so much a part of the church. The church were the patrons of this music for thousands of years.
Yes.
And that's what we have to understand.
And it's not only that the church was patron in the sense of paying for it, mm-hmm. which we did,
sure.
and coming up with musical notation,
mm-hmm.
which the Catholic Church did, but also it provided the texts of the Mass, mm-hmm. the scriptures, and other stories from the Bible that became, or that were set by the music, so that they interplayed and interacted. And this was a living relationship.
Yes.
That's very vital. We have to go to a break. But when we do, I want to give you just another little taste of what In Concert has to offer. And then we'll be back after that with your questions and your phone calls. So please stay with us. Welcome back. Just let you know that what we saw when we were going into the break was an operatic piece called Mia Fiamma, My Flame. It was sung by Cecilia Bartoli in Versailles, France. That's why that beautiful setting is. That's not here on our grounds. And who was the composer of that piece?
The composer is Agostino Stefani, who was a priest composer. A priest who composed. There's another very famous composer who was also a priest composer. Do you know?
I can't think of it.
He's also known as the red-headed priest, Antonio Vivaldi.
Oh, Vivaldi,
yeah. Well, Stefani was also a priest composer. Cecilia Bartoli is one of our great singers of the day. She is a coloratura mezzo-soprano. And in this concert, which she does with the countertenor that you heard, Philippe Jarouski, excellent French countertenor who's having a very successful career right now. In this, they do the music of this obscure composer, excellent, outstanding obscure composer. Cecilia Bartoli is actually known for this, that she researches, she searches out these compositions by more obscure composers. So this is a great example of a priest who contributed greatly to our music.
Okay. Well, before we go to your questions, I just want to mention that if you have a chance to come here on pilgrimage, we invite you to do so. Please contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966, or you can go online at www.ewtn.com, and they'll give you all kinds of information about that. Now, ready for some questions?
I am ready for questions.
Let's giddy up. Start off with John. Hello, John.
Oh, hi, Father Mitch.
Hi, where are you from?
I'm from Michigan.
Great. And what's your question?
Well, you and EWTN teach us so many wonderful things about the scriptures and Catholic teachings. I thought this would be perfect to ask with Professor Warsaw there. With her expertise, is there any way to do more or have a series about Gregorian chant? We hear some now in our churches and hopefully more in the future, but many people in the pews, I think, do not understand its history or how wonderful the various examples of it are and how uplifting it can be.
John, that's a great question. Thank you.
It is an excellent question. Gregorian chant is at the root of the Catholic Church, obviously. I would be very open to having a concert as such as what John is talking about. If we are able to obtain something like that, would absolutely be, I think, a nice contribution to the series.
Here's something that I also want to ask. After whom is Gregorian chant named? Who's behind that?
It's named after Pope Gregory I, also Pope Gregory the Great, usually referred to as Pope Gregory the Great. When I was growing up and learning about music, learning specifically about Gregorian chant, I was taught that he actually was the composer behind most of that. We know now that we can attribute much of the existence of this chant to him because of his support, because of the changes that were coming about in the liturgy at that time. Now, as to whether he composed any of the chants himself, that is still to be learned. But that is who we can attribute the existence to. But I don't want to mislead our viewers. Chant existed long before the Christian Church. We know from the Old Testament that chant was sung in the Jewish temples. So it's not something that we invented by any means, but it is something that
from the Jewish people.
We picked it up from the Jewish people, and we incorporated it then into our liturgy.
And when you go to the other rites as well, you see each of them has distinctive styles of chant. There's, Chaldeans have their way of chanting. Of course, Maronites, where I go, and Coptic Christians, they all have different styles of chanting, but chanting is in all the rites. No matter which one, and we're familiar with Latin. And I heard that, give you just a comment on that. I heard one writer describe chant as a humble form of music. You don't have virtuosity, but you subject your virtuosity to the music in common with everybody else. Does that ring true with you?
Yeah, absolutely. The chant is done in such a way, it was written in such a way so as to not take away from the liturgy. That the rhythmic pattern is taken from the natural rhythmic pattern of the speech. So there is no metered rhythm in chant. Right. So it being a humble way of singing, a humble vocal art, is so that it was to not take away in any means from the liturgy or from the prayer. You find that the vocal ranges are very limited. What that means is that people of any vocal ability could sing them, right?
In other words, you don't have going
virtuosic.
2 octaves high and then 2 octaves low.
Right.
No, it's within
Right. So it's within a
easy range.
Easy range. So, but that again, if we look at that, that keeps it from becoming too virtuosic.
Right.
Virtuosity was at that time looked at as something that became more about the person.
Right.
And it's not about the person.
Right.
It was
It's about the words.
The words.
I have another question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
From Glassboro, New Jersey.
Good to have you. And your comment or question?
Yes, I have a comment. I think I really like this program that you're talking about music in the church today. Our parish, Mater Ecclesiae, which is a Latin parish in Berlin, New Jersey, we do the Gregorian chant, and we also have a lot of choral masses, high masses every week. We have a high mass every Sunday, and it's all sung in Latin, and they do the Gregorian chant. And on the Assumption, the Feast of the Assumption, our rector, Father Paisley, every year has a huge concert in at St. Peter's in Merchantville, and we do the Mass by Vivaldi. We've done it by Vivaldi. We've done it by Bach. We've done it by Monteverdi. And each year it's a different composer, and it draws thousands of people to the church. I mean, it's incredible. And this is how we're reviving the music of the church in New Jersey. And Father Paisley is also the head of it's a group of priests that are now promoting Gregorian chant. And they're trying to revive it and bring it back into the church.
You know, that's, thank you very much. There's the number of churches, St. Agnes in Minneapolis does that, and St. John Cantius in Chicago will have an orchestra, I think once a month, do one of the masses that you would have, but in Mass, not as a concert, but it's the Mass setting.
Within the Mass itself,
Yes.
exactly. So there's two different things that we're talking about here. One is the Gregorian chant, which through then growth of polyphony, 2 or more musical lines, and through homophony, which is melody set to an accompaniment, a chordal accompaniment, that grew to then what we know of as the great masses that we're talking about. So the masses of Mozart, of Vivaldi, etc., Bach.
Who wasn't even Catholic.
No, he was
Bach
Lutheran.
wasn't Catholic, but he still wrote
right.
masses.
Right, that's right. That's right. Those works are they're musical settings of the Mass Ordinary. And so, yes, they were written to incorporate into the parts of the Mass Ordinary. However, in time also, that music was taken out of the church, and it, to this day, is also concertized. So in a concert hall or what have you. Also, there are masses that have thus become concert pieces, which wouldn't be even sensible to perform them within the context of the liturgy, even though they're parts of the Mass Ordinary. But because
like Beethoven's Missa Solemnis.
Absolutely.
It's far too long.
It's too long.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense.
Right.
However, when we understand the origins of this, when we can put it within the context, the historical context, then sure, we can be sitting in a concert hall and enjoy that. But again, we understand it's not just that Beethoven or whoever came up with this great idea, but it was the influence of the church for that.
That they had the words, the Kyrie,
Right.
the Gloria, the Credo,
Right.
the Sanctus, the Agnus Dei. These were set,
Right.
and they composed around those written texts.
Right.
And they were limited by that, and they made beauty happen.
Absolutely.
You know, like Bach's Mass in B minor. It's just hard to beat. I wouldn't use it as Mass because it is also long. But
Absolutely.
it's fantastic for meditation.
Absolutely.
We have another caller. Hello, Gary.
Yes, I'm.
Hi, where are you
Gary.
from?
Yes, I'm from Miami.
Great. And your question?
First of all, I'm just so enjoying this conversation, and I want to thank Ms. Warsaw for sharing her insights and her vocation with all of the viewers. I have a musical recommendation which is tied into my question, and the recommendation is Karen Carpenter's rendition of Ave Maria, and I think it's Bach, but I can't be absolutely sure of it. It's an alternative version of Ave Maria. You can get it on YouTube and other places. It's exquisite. And it ties into my larger question of what about the popular artists who may not be Catholic or who may be secularized, but who have this God-given voice, this God-given talent, like Karen Carpenter, like the great Whitney Houston, Judy Garland, all of these American great singers. What advice would Ms. Warsaw have to give to parents trying to raise wholesome kids, and also wanting to enrich their lives musically, about how they can stay connected to wholesome, top-notch, top-rate, top American singers and top American music?
Great question.
Great question. Commercial music in our culture is very, very important. But equally important is that not only children, but all of us living today, that we all have an awareness and an understanding of this other world, this so-called classical world, or what we can also say is art music. We call it art music. I really believe that any music that can bring us closer to God, and there is a lot of great commercial music out there by the Christian artists that does that inspires the soul. But again, I go back to this idea that it has to be an understanding. It has to be back in the educational part. An example of this is my son. I seem to be talking a lot about my children, and my son is a country music freak. But he has grown up in the concert hall. He has grown up in churches that do this great music. So one doesn't take away from the other.
Right.
And so my recommendation to commercial artists is get to know it. get to know it. It's
Play it
yeah.
in the home.
Absolutely.
Have CDs.
Right.
I was going to say records, but that's my youth when we had records. But to have CDs with music that's good quality, playing, and let that be part of the environment.
Right.
My parents had, my dad liked jazz, my mom liked Harry Belafonte. We heard that. And my aunt had some classical pieces. You know, we heard different kinds of music. And my dad played the organ with, you know, the popular music. But this is the stuff that was there. Make it available.
Right.
That's key.
And I'm very proud of what we do within concert, because that is what we do. We do make it available. The accessibility is there. Now, when we started 20 years ago, we were not living in quite a digital age as we are now. And so there were not many opportunities for people to hear this music. Again, perhaps they heard it in a church or maybe on a recording. But unless they had the money, the $80 to $100 to purchase a ticket to go to a concert in their town, or unless they had the money to go and buy that record or what have you, whatever recording, unless they had that, there wasn't just the general accessibility. There wasn't anything on the air that was like what we were offering 20 years ago. And I have to say, to our knowledge, that is still the case. Certainly PBS has produced many wonderful concerts. We can't forget
of great variety, too.
Of great variety. Live from the Lincoln Center, all of that. However, to have an ongoing weekly series is very unusual. And all it means is turning on the television, and here we are.
Yeah.
There's, you know.
Yeah, I don't know of any other network that has it every week,
right,
like EWTN does.
No.
So this is, I want to thank you for having, you know, accepted that call from Marshall Levioki to do this, but then for 20 years guiding this along,
right,
and instructing us in this kind of music. That's been a very great gift. And hopefully you'll be doing it for a good while yet.
Well, I'm ready to do it for 20 more years. So.
And maybe your son can do a series on country music.
There you go.
Religious songs. There's plenty of that out there too. Well, we'll talk. I want to thank you for being with us tonight, because we're just getting close to the end here. But before we leave, also, I want you to all please take some time to remember our brothers and sisters in the Philippines. They just had their deadliest earthquake in 23 years at Cebu City just about a month ago. It was a 7.2 magnitude earthquake, and it killed over 200 people and injured close to 1,000. And then 3 weeks after that, Super Typhoon Haiyan, also called Yolanda, hit the region, destroying at least 80,000 homes. It's amazing to see what the towns looked like before and after. And at least 500,000 Filipinos are homeless. They are hungry. They don't have water. I mean, the military is trying to help them and all. But the toll is about 2,275 so far. And so this is very serious. So if you get a chance, please pray for them. Also, if you can, contact the missionaries of the poor. at Post Office Box 29893, Atlanta, Georgia, 30359. And you can make a check out to the MOP Philippine Hurricane Relief. And also, you can go to the Philippine Jesuit Foundation in New York. And there you can go to www.phjesuits.org. These and other church organizations, again, will get you more of that info. They'll be coming up. They're the best bet to get stuff to the people that need it. Let me give you all a blessing. May the Lord bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And remember that you bring this network to you. So please keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and your cable bill, and we'll pay our bills too. Thank you.